50 years ago next week, on December 3, 1967, an operation took place that to this day remains the most controversial in medical history. News that Christiaan Barnard, a surgeon at Groote Schuur Hospital in Cape Town, South Africa, had carried out the first human-to-human heart transplant was greeted with a mixture of amazement, shock, disbelief, and condemnation from those who accused Barnard of being a butcher and taking God's work into his own hands. As a youngster growing up in rural Yorkshire, I can remember reading the newspaper accounts and wondering how it would feel to have a stranger's heart beating inside me. It seemed like that belonged to the realms of science fiction rather than reality. What I could never have imagined back then was the pivotal effect this operation would have on my own life and career after I got to know Barnard. Few people in history have risen from obscurity to global superstardom as quickly as Christiaan Neethling Barnard. On the Saturday of the operation, I was a little-known surgeon in South Africa. On Monday I was world-renowned. He told me.He was second only to Nelson Mandela, South Africa's most famous citizen, and the biggest name in medicine since Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, some 2,500 years previously. With his broad smile, tanned good looks and ready wit, he had a talent for ad-libbing. This medical messiah enjoyed the fame and flaming adulation bestowed on him by members of the public, journalists, Hollywood stars such as Sophia Loren and Grace Kelly, and heads of state. He was invited to give his opinion on everything, from global politics to the benefits of jogging, and he embraced life as an international playboy with a series of high-profile affairs and divorces. Ultimately, it would damage his reputation as a surgeon, especially in later years, when he gave his name to dubious bombs and rejuvenation therapy as part of his own desperate attempts to thwart the aging process. You write as someone who will always be grateful to Chris Barnard.I was a medical journalist when we met for the first time in 1979 to work on the body machine, a book that explored the concept, developed by the 16th French philosopher René Descartes, about the machine-like nature of the human body. Our book compared the body with machines ranging from cars to guided missiles, and argued that the human body machine has all the best patents. No man-made pump will function as reliably for 70 years, or more as the human heart. He wrote the text and Chris did what he did best. The promotion.He was the best communicator of medical matters I have ever known. But there was a sinister downside to his presentation skills. Unlike most other doctors I had met who avoided publicity instinctively, he craved it, declaring that anyone who didn't like it must be mad. A substantial part of my income in the 80s came from our book, not so much because of its intellectual substance, but because Barnard had been in the news, usually for all the wrong reasons. During one brief visit to Rome, for example, he was received by the Pope and then had a one-night stand with film star Gina Lollobrigida. Chris Barnard was a bundle of moral contradictions. He was an outspoken opponent of South Africa's apartheid laws. He advocated euthanasia as a humane and compassionate end to human suffering. He was also, according to some colleagues, a loudmouthed tyrant. Sex and women, especially young ones, were certainly important to him. He magazine Paris Match once named him as one of the world's 4 greatest lovers. His fame had placed intolerable strain on his first marriage of 21 years to Aletta Lau, a nurse who had helped to support him while he developed his surgical career, and with whom he had 2 children. They divorced in 1969, and a year later he married a 19-year-old heiress, and had 2 more children. Following a second divorce and now in his 60s, he acquired a 22-year-old girlfriend, Karen Setskery, a South African model. She became his 3rd wife, and gave him 2 more children, before he divorced her, when he was 78. A Viagra-fueled affair with a woman in her 20s was next. He once confessed, very much a sex-orientated man. All of Christiaan Barnard's fame, of course, centered primarily on one thing, the fact that he was the first to perform an operation that many people thought could not, or should not be performed for either technical or moral reasons. Half a century on, with more than 200 heart transplants carried out in the UK each year, this may seem hard to grasp. But in the 60s, even surgeons regarded human heart transplantation with great skepticism. In 1963, the British Heart Foundation had rejected a research grant application to develop heart transplants made by Donald Longmore, a consultant surgeon at the National Heart Hospital. We were told that the roars of laughter could be heard 2 or 3 blocks away, he said. In the US, however, there was a different attitude in the race. To perform the first heart transplant was as dramatic as that between the America and the Soviet Union to reach the moon. Two surgeons, Professor Norman Shumway of Stanford University and Dr. Richard Lower at the Medical College of Virginia, with whom Barnard had studied, had conducted hundreds of heart transplants on dogs over nearly a decade to develop what became known as the Shumway-Lower technique. Early in 1967, Lower's team had a recipient and donor ready, and the operation might have gone ahead, but for concerns about blood group incompatibility. No one knew what the consequences might be for the recipient, so Lower vetoed it, insisting, the first one has to be done right. Another planned operation by Dr. Adrian Kantrowitz in New York was also cancelled at the last minute. This caution left the door open for the more aggressive and ambitious Barnard.He too had been conducting experiments on animals, although his research could not compare to that of the Americans, and assembling a transplant team in Cape Town, which included his brother, Dr. Marius Barnard. Several factors gave the South African edge, not least his doggedness.Th. Son of an impoverished Dutch reform minister turned missionary, Barnard always had a steely determination and a speculative eye on life's glittering prizes. His mother had always insisted that he and his 3 brothers were capable of doing anything they set their minds to. As a youngster, Barnard ran a record mile in bare feet and won a school tennis championship with a borrowed racket and cardboard covering the holes in his shoes. And yes, he was also top of his class. He also had the freedom to be more daring than his American colleagues, or more reckless, according to his critics. You have to recognize that in South Africa we didn't have the legal restraints of other countries, he told me. I didn't even have asked permission to do that first transplant. I just told the hospital authorities after I had done it. Can you imagine that happening anywhere else in the world? He also had luck.I. In November 1967, Barnard had found his recipient, a 54-year-old grocer from Cape Town, Louis Washkansky, who had suffered 3 heart attacks and had congestive heart failure. He agreed to take the gamble, because without a new heart he would die soon anyway. However, a transplant can only occur if a suitable donor becomes available at the right time. On Saturday afternoon, December 2, 1967, Denise Darville, a 25-year-old accounting machine operator, was crossing the road in Salt River, near Cape Town, with her mother, Myrtle, after buying a caramel cake at the local bakery. They were hit by a car driven by a drunk driver. Myrtle was killed instantly, while Denise sustained devastating head injuries. The father, Edward, agreed to donate a heart, telling Barnard, "If you can't save my daughter, you must try to save this man." In South Africa, a patient could be considered as a donor if 2 doctors, one qualified for more than 5 years, declared that the individual was dead. There was, however, no stipulation about the criteria they could use. Barnard explained, "We used brain death as the moment of death, when we could remove the heart." But he faced a dilemma. Should he, as he was legally entitled to do, because Denise Darville had been declared brain dead, remove her heart while it was still beating to ensure that it was as fresh as possible, or should he wait until it stopped beating naturally? The former option would give Washkansky a better chance of survival, but a beating human heart had never been removed in this way before. He finally decided to wait until her heart stopped beating naturally, fearing that to do otherwise would invite condemnation, although that came anyway. The operation involved 2 teams of 30 people, one team to remove Denise Darville's heart, the other to place it in Louis Washkansky's chest, working in 2 adjacent theaters, with Barnard leading on both. He would use the shumway lower technique pioneered by the American surgeons. As soon as Darville's heart stopped beating, Barnard instructed his team to begin the process of cutting through the rib cage, while he went to attend to Washkansky, who was already attached to a heart-lung machine. This would take over the job of the heart and lungs, maintaining the circulation of the blood throughout the body. Everything was going smoothly until Barnard wrongly instructed a nurse to clamp one of the tubes from the heart-lung machine delivering blood to Wishkansky's body. It was a blunder that could have killed him before the transplant had even begun. The pressure quickly built up, disconnecting the tube and resulting in a flood of blood. Wishkansky was being deprived of the oxygen-rich blood he needed to stay alive. Fortunately, Barnard reacted quickly and ordered that the machine be switched off. Wishkansky's circulation was then restored, and Barnard returned to Darvel, removed her heart, and carried it carefully back, 31 steps, to the other theater, where he removed Wishkansky's heart. After sewing a new heart into Wishkansky's chest, Barnard ordered that the clamps be removed, so that blood could enter it. The heart immediately went into fibrillation, twitching in an uncoordinated manner. Again, rapid action was needed. Barnard placed two metal panels on either side of the new heart and restored a regular heartbeat with a jolt of an electric shock. Then he gave the order to switch off the heart-lung machine to see if the transplanted heart would function independently. It took 3 attempts before, at last, the heart began beating on its own and regularly. He asked how he had felt during the operation, and his answer surprised me. I'd seen the insides of many chests, but I'd never before seen a human being who was alive without a heart in their chest, he said. I will never forget looking into that empty chest. It was weird. I wanted to turn around and look into somebody's eyes for reassurance that it was all going to go to plan, but there was nobody I could turn to. I felt so alone. Louis Wishkansky recovered consciousness after the operation and was able to sit up in his bed, talk with his family and reporters, and pose for photographers. Sadly, he survived for only 18 days before succumbing to pneumonia. The powerful immunosuppressant drugs that he'd been given to prevent rejection of the new heart had left him unable to fight other infections. For Barnard, however, it was the start of that glittering life as a celebrity. The more I had got to know him, the more I saw something of Peter Pan. He wasn't the boy who couldn't grow up, more the man who couldn't grow old. I could understand his horror as a surgeon as his nimble golden hands became gnarled by arthritis, but not his desperate reaction to his thickening waistline, his thinning hair and sagging skin. In his determination to prolong his youthful appeal, he resorted to injecting himself and other aging people who sought his help with animal cells reputed to halt the aging process. In 1986, he endorsed a so-called elixir of youth, marketed as a cream to stop aging and enhance sexual prowess. What was left of his credibility diminished further. By the time of Barnard's death in Cyprus in 2001 at the age of 78, an estimated 100,000 heart transplants have been performed around the world, with a 5-year success rate of 75%. Much of the credit must go to Professor Shumway and the team in Stanford, whose painstaking work laid the foundations. But it was Christiaan Barnard who was the man who dared, and for that he has his place in history.